Welcome to Occultist Radio. Radio for the higher self. With your hosts, Vicky Adams and Jymie Darling. I thought I'd play some peaceful music since it's been such a peaceful week. We have a spring equinox ritual tomorrow that we're going to be filming at the store and getting up next week. We're talking about Gnosticism this week. But before we get into that, you know, and we've had discussions about this with some people in the store and some people who are leaders of groups. I guess we're calling it, what is it? Cyber courage? Cyber courage. We're calling it cyber courage. You know how you drink and you get liquid courage and you open your mouth and then you regret it? We're running into a lot of people who have cyber courage, only they're getting it in real life now. And they're regretting it. And here's what I'm talking about. And it's happening a lot in the occult. People are saying stuff and they're not owning it. Own it. If you're going to say it, own it. If you don't want to own it, don't say it. There's consequences to owning it. And if you can't take that, then you don't say it. And here's the case in point. Pretty much anybody who's on my Facebook knows that I had some transgendered something or another, made female going to male. Gets to a what's that?
Nothing. Not that we have a problem with people like
no
process, because when you say something, people think that's the issue. No,
that's not the issue. The issue is that it got up and it went to the door, and as she got, do you call him a she or a he right now?
And it just because we're so disgusted with he she. I think it was a girl going into male.
So do I call it a girl or a male?
Well, he, I guess.
All right, well, he decides to wait to get to the door and go, psycho, at me.
Oh, that sounded like a girl.
Yeah.
Screaming.
So I went out the door and said, what the fuck did you say to me? And boom, took off down the sidewalk, walking with the head down. Nope, that's not going to work. You said it, you're going to own it. I said, what did you say to me? Turn around and say it to my face. Turn around and say it to my face. I want you to turn around and say it to my face. Well, he did not. And so a fight ensued. To which she pulled my hair. I've never been in a fight where something's pulled my hair. That's if you're going to fight, don't fight like a punk.
Pussy.
You're fighting like a bitch there.
Yeah.
And so, not only are they pulling my hair, they're knocking on my head, like knocking on a door. So, I worked, the people came over to break it up because they thought I was getting my ass whooped and they were going to help me. And then they saw that, I was actually winning because I was like doing kidney shots and liver shots and getting in underneath the rib cage and really knocking the hell out of this person and reaching over and hitting in the face and splitting the lips.
They assaulted you first.
Right, and they assaulted me first. But here's the thing. So, wow. She asked Vicky, why did she follow me down the street? And Vicky said, because you didn't shut up. Because you kept flapping your gums.
Yeah.
And to them, they were like, but I was out on the sidewalk. It didn't matter that you were in the store when you started it. You opened the door. You made sure that, yes, you were on the sidewalk, but you made sure the door was open so you could say it to me. You're going to own it. Now, point 2 in question is this girl in New York. And there was a discussion about child support. And Lisa, Knobloch, I just like saying her name, Knobloch, over there in Utica, decides that she's going to try to do a battle of wits with me. And she lost. So she took out all her posts because that made it better. So it took me 2 minutes. I went into my email and I put all her posts back up and I said, no, you said it. You're going to own it. So she goes, you look like a transsexual. Your profile pic looks mean. and you talk manly, which manly to her equates educated, I guess, because all I was saying was educated things, and I wasn't being mean, I was being condescending. There's a difference. I wish people would learn it. Because, I was saying things like, she was just in asking for child support. Just means up, it means in the right. In the right means correct. Just in case you can't follow my conversation. And I was being condescending. But I wasn't being mean. I was being condescending. There's a difference. And so I got one sucker punch, so yeah, I got a black and blue nose because I got sucker punched in the face. Then today, where there's this peace protest that's really not a peace protest, it's a communist march. And this guy grabs my son because he's allowed his freedom of speech, but my son's not allowed to say anti-communist, have an anti-communist piece of paper that says no communism. And so he grabs my son and assaults him. Or grabs him by the jacket. He doesn't assault him. Grabs him by the jacket. Then the cops arrest him, and he's like, why? Why? I have freedom of speech. Yeah, you have freedom of speech. And he goes, why is he pressing charges? And I said, I'm pressing charges because you need to own it. You grabbed him. Now you can own it. Then just before the show, two friends go walking down the street, and they're heavy. They're heavy set people.
Yeah, so what?
So what? And they walk past the pizza parlor, and this guy trying to impress this kid trying to impress five of his little girls from the little trendy little farce down from the valley, says something about his weight. So Casper walks in and he goes, "Did you just say something about me?" Kid goes, "No." So Casper left. Well, I walked outside and I walked back in. I walked into the pizza place, walked right over to their table, stood over the top of the five of them and went, "I am so tired of you pieces of shit cowards coming out." No, and I'm talking to a friend. I'm not talking to them. And I said, not owning the shit that you say. If you can't own it, don't say it. You cowards, you spineless, gutless pieces of crap. What are you doing in my town anyway, you preppy little fuckers? I said, I'm so tired of these people coming into town and not owning it. Own it. We watch people in the occult, and it's happened to, they say shit about you and I, and then as we walk in,
they want to hug us.
It's
like, and we're like, no.
No, and we say, no, we won't hug you.
We used to, but we don't anymore.
And they'll go, like, and they'll go, what?
Well, we heard what you said.
We heard what you said. You're owning it.
Do you want to say it to our face right now?
Yeah, and now do you want to say it to our face? I never said it.
Like,
if you're going to say it, own it. Just own it. The ceremony does not begin promptly at 7. For the ritual tomorrow, it's around 7. We start doing the paperwork and stuff like that. Ceremony will probably start around 8. But it's really a thing this week, and it's really prevalent. Do you know what I mean? People not owning it. They don't own it. They don't own their stuff, and it's prevalent, and it's really getting to me. And the thing is you walk in, and their little faces drop, and they don't have anything to say to you, and they hug us when we walk in. Remember the event we walked into?
Yeah.
And a whole coven stood up and walked over and said, if they don't make us leave, they're walking out. And the coven that was throwing the party said that they could then leave. Well, they went on the web and they said, I had to take a shower after walking next to Jymie and Vicky because of the spiritual grunge I got off of me. Well, when I saw that girl next, I said, you want to say it to my face now? And she goes, I never said it. I said, you wrote it.
But we were standing right there and we heard
it. And I said, not only did you say it, you wrote it. And it's on a blog. She goes, no, I did it. I said, I can pull up the blog. She goes, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Somebody using my name. And I said, well, then it was somebody using your body and mouth at the ritual because you said it. And we were right there and we're not stupid and deaf. And then she was like, And I just own it.
Right.
Just own it. You know what? If we don't like somebody, we own it.
Uh-huh.
We own it.
Oh, yeah.
We do. We own it. Let's get on to Gnosticism.
Anyway.
Because Gnosticism is a huge undertaking, isn't it?
Are we done with the rant?
We're done with the rant. We're done with the you must own your shit.
Yeah.
We can start with the show. I I'm done. And I'm only mad because my nose hurts.
I know.
Stupid ass.
It looks pretty brutal.
I'm thinking, though, the larger nose, it might suit my face.
Whatever.
Yay, I get to try a new look without doing plastic surgery. Alright, let's get down to business.
Alright, so, I wonder how many people know what Gnosticism really means. Or what it is.
I don't, Gnosticism is such a broad term, and it's almost like Rosicrucian. It's so broad, it's split off into so many directions.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
But it is fascinating. God, it's fascinating. Because you got Greek Gnosticism, you got Christian Gnosticism, you got a lot of great Gnosticism in here.
Yeah. Okay, we're just going to get started.
Yeah, might as well.
Alright. So, Gnosticism is a set of diverse syncretistic religious movements in late antiquity, consisting of various belief systems generally united in the teaching that the material cosmos was created by an imperfect God.
Now that's where it becomes interesting, isn't it? An imperfect God.
Yeah.
Because most religions believe in it's a perfect God that starts it. Gnosticism starts out with the belief that it was an imperfect God.
So I wasn't finished with my sentence.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say his name, but
sorry.
But that's true. That's a valid point, obviously. Anyway, by an imperfect God, I don't know if I'm going to slaughter this pronunciation. So Yadabaoth?
Yeah.
All right. I'm so bad with names. But like she said, every God, when people, adopt a religion or whatnot, their God is always the most perfect being.
And yet this was an imperfect God. I mean, they start out with the idea of God is not perfect. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And you know where it comes from. That's the base that comes from Egyptian religion, because none of their gods were perfect. Mm-hmm. Now, depictions of Yaldabaoth,
they strive for perfection.
Yeah.
Plus their statue was, had the symmetry to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Term originates in actually Plato's Timaeus, from being an embodiment of evil to being merely imperfect and as benevolent as its inadequacy permits. Now, Gnosticism was a dualistic religion, influenced by and influencing Hellenic philosophy, Judaism, Christianity. But, however, by contrast, later strands of the movement, such as, and this is the most popular strand of it, and this is the one we'll be talking about most tonight, is the Valentinians, held a monistic worldview. The Hellenic philosophy is a period of Western, in case people don't know, a period of Western philosophy that was developed in the Hellenistic civilization from 323 BC to about 146 BC, following Aristotle and ending with the beginning of Neoplatism, which is kind of interesting because it's right in that area where there was nothing really going on with philosophers, but you have a lot of Aristotle's influence in Gnosticism.
Yeah. Okay, Valentinianism is a Gnostic movement that was founded by the Valentinus in the 2nd century AD and was one of the major Gnostic movements. Its influence was extremely widespread, not just within Rome, but also from Egypt through Asian Minor, Syria in the east, and the northwest African regions. Later in the movement's history, it broke into two schools, an Eastern school and a Western school. Disciples of Valentinus continued to be active into the 4th century AD, after the Roman Empire was declared to be Christian.
In the Gnostic view, helix, which is also called somatics. Now, it's the order of human beings. We're the lowest order of the three types of humans. Okay, the other two are psychics and pneumatics. Mm-hmm. Okay, so humanity comprised matter-bound beings, matter-dwelling beings, and matter-free beings. The pneumatics saw themselves as escaping the doom of the material world via the secret knowledge. Outsiders could only know these secrets by joining a Gnostic group. To be a Gnostic is to believe in three planes of existence: the pure unknown, the material world of coitus and comfort, and the pure spiritual realm of ascension or escape. Somatics were deemed completely bound to matter. Matter, meaning the material world, was seen as evil in the Gnostic worldview. The material world was created by Yaldabaoth, in some instances a blind, mad god during that period. In others, an army of rebellious angels as a trap for the spiritual Enoia, which is kind of like the spirit, or the energy. The duty of spiritual man was to escape the material world by the aid of hidden knowledge, gnosis.
Mm-hmm. Somatics, God, I did the same thing he did. Somatics were human in form, but since their entire focus was on the material world, such as eating, sleeping, meeting, creature comforts, and so on, they were seen as doomed. The pneumatics saw himself as escaping the doom of the material world via the secret knowledge. Somatics were thought to be incapable of understanding. Gnostic ideas became influential in the philosophies of various esoteric mystic movements in the late 19th and 20th centuries in Europe and North America, including some that explicitly identified themselves as rivals or even continuations of earlier Gnostic groups. Let's go into the main features of Gnosticism.
The main features of Gnosticism. Gnostic systems, particularly the Syrian Egyptian schools, are typically marked out by a couple of things, and here they are. The notion of a remote supreme monadic divinity source. The figure is known as a variety of names. It could be fullness, totality, or depth and profundity, which is Bethos and Pleroma. The introduction of emanation of further divine beings known as eons, which are nevertheless identifiable as aspects of the God which they preceded. The progressive emanations are often conceived metaphorically as a gradual and progressive distancing from the ultimate source, which brings about an instability in the fabric of the divine nature. And the introduction of the distinct God, which is an illusion, and a later emanation from the single source. The second God is a lesser or inferior or false God. This creator God, commonly referred to as demiurgos, which is a technical term literally denoting a public worker. So, it's like a Latinized form of Greek, which means public god or skilled worker. Just kind of like
skilled worker or public god.
Public servant god.
Yeah.
Used in the Platonist tradition. Yeah, we're just making fun of things. It's okay. Hello?
Hello.
Just making sure you're still with me here.
Yeah.
The estimation of the world owing to the above is flawed or a production of error, but possibly good, as its constitute material might allow. Now, this world is typically an inferior world, which is a likeness or similarity. Right. Of a higher level reality or consciousness. So in other words, it's almost like it's what you're living in the inferior world is the reality of a higher being. Inferiority may be compared to the technical inferiority of a painting or a sculpture or some other kind of representation. In certain cases, it takes a more aesthetic tendency to view material existence negatively, which becomes more than extreme when materiality in the human body is perceived as evil, constrictive, and a deliberate prison for its inhabitants. So really in Gnosticism they start to believe that the body itself is a prison. Mm-hmm. and the things that are around you keep you bound. Now, this is interesting because if you take a look at the devil card in tarot,
right,
you've got the two individuals that have the chains around their necks, but they're loose.
Yeah,
they're loose, and they're not bound by hands or feet.
Right.
So they could slip the chains off at any time.
Right.
But they've got the animalistic nature because they got the horns and the tails. And the man's got the tail of the fire, which makes him animal, which is lust. The girl's is the intoxication of materiality, which is the grapes. And it's interesting because that's very Gnostic in the sense that you are imprisoning yourself on the basis of the material world. Gnosticism sees to remove those chains from around the neck. And
maybe the church should take a look into Gnosticism.
Well, the church, the church,
since it was
everything kind of was bound to get derived from each other.
But they should have stuck to it.
They should have stuck to it. And the explanation of this is through.
I'm talking about the Catholic Church.
Well, most of the Christian churches.
I actually said the Orthodox churches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're loaded down with their gold.
They are. Now so it's really material existence is really viewed negatively, and the explanation through the use of complex mythological and cosmological drama in which divine element falls into the material realm, lodges itself within certain human beings. From here, it may be returned to the divine realm through a process of awakening. This leads towards salvation. In other words, as you awaken and become enlightened, so does the salvation. So does your so thus do you walk towards your salvation. Now, the salvation of the individual mirrors the restoration of the divine nature. A central Gnostic innovation was to elevate individual redemption to the level of a cosmically significant event. Typically, Gnostic systems are loosely described as dualistic in nature, meaning that they had the view that the world consists of or is explicable as two fundamental entities. The cardinal feature of Gnostic thought is that the radical dualism that governs the relation of God and world corresponds that of man and world. Within that definition, they run the gamut from radical dualistic systems that were like, you had Manichaeism that did mitigated dualism of classic Gnostic movements. The Valentinian developments arguably approach a form of monism expressed in terms previously that we've discussed in here. Now, radical dualism or absolute dualism kind of says that there's co-equal divine forces, and I just want to cover a little bit of the Manichaeism because it conceives of two, because it was a classical foundation of Gnosticism, and it conceives of two previously coexistent realms of light and darkness, which become embroiled in conflict owing to the chaotic actions of the latter. So the light became trapped within the darkness, and the purpose of the material creation is to enact the slow process of extraction of these individual elements, at the end of which the kingdom of light will prevail over darkness. Now, what's funny is that from there came
Zoroastrianism.
Yes. I'm not going to try that word. In which the eternal spirit, Ahura Mazda, is opposed by Angra Mainyu. Now, the two are engaged in a cosmic struggle, the conclusion of which will likewise see Ahura Mazda triumph. Now, and it's really something because Zoroastria's,
it's okay.
The Zoroastric religions modeled themselves so closely after Gnosticism that there are just minute differences. They just took a slight Eastern approach to it.
What's that book that's out on the Zoroaster? It's a real popular title.
I'm not sure. Additionally, you see that Gnostic thought commonly included the belief that the material world corresponds to some sort of malevolent intoxication. Again, let's go back to the devil card. Where we have the intoxication thing of the animal tails, and anyway, brought about by the powers of darkness to keep elements of the light trapped inside of it, or literally to keep people in the dark in a state of drunken distraction. In other words, if we can keep you distracted by the shiny things, then you'll never reach the light, or you'll never reach actual enlightened enlightened formats or enlightened thought.
All right, to ascend, you mean? So mitigated dualism, where one of the two principles is in some way inferior to the other, such as classical Gnostic movements, as the Scythians conceive of the material world as being created by a lesser divinity than the true God that was the object of their devotion. The spiritual world is conceived as being radically different from the material world, coextensive with the tune of God and the true home of certain enlightened members of humanity. Thus these systems were expressive of a feeling of acute alienation within the world, and their resultant aim was to allow the soul to escape the constraints presented by the physical realm.
Yeah.
No wonder they're all so into spiritualism.
Oh, exactly. Qualified monism, where it is arguably
as far as the spirit world,
yeah,
is what I meant by that. I mean, obviously. So.
Now, where it is arguable whether or not the second entity is divine or semi-divine. Elements of Valentinian versions of Gnostic myth suggest to some that understanding of the universe may be monistic rather than dualistic. Mm-hmm. Now, Valentinian Gnosticism differs essentially from dualism by some people's standard, while others say that the interpretation and it says that no, it isn't. It is actually a dualistic religion, mm-hmm, showing a light and dark, mm-hmm, and that it is two separate entities, mm-hmm, and not just not just an imperfect and then a semi-divine.
Right.
Now, the Valentinian, which is really the ones that you'll get the most information out of right now, because the rest of them are kind of more like a secret sect.
God, you know what they remind me of? That's I was trying to think of what sect I was thinking of. Tibetan shamanism.
Yes.
They hold the same view.
Yes.
With the lesser god and the material being bound by the material plane created by a lesser god.
Yes.
They say the exact same thing.
Yeah. The Valentinian tradition conceives of materiality rather than being as a separate substance from the divine, as an attribute to an era of perception, which becomes symbolized in almost a mythopoetically as the act of material creation. In other words, you're the materialism that is around you is an error of perception that you need it.
Right. Now, there's also a branch of, it's the now extinct branch of Zoroastrianism, which was called Zurvanism, and it had the divinity as Zurvan as its first principle, the primordial, creator deity, basically. And Zurvanism was also known as Zurvanite Zoroastrianism, with a brief description of it. I mean, it basically is a religion and a philosophy based on the teachings of the prophet Zoroaster, and was formerly among the world's largest religions. It was probably founded sometime before the 6th century BC in Persia, which is now, Iran. The term Zoroastrianism is in general usage, essentially synonymous with Mazdaism, which is the worship of Ahura Mazda, exalted by Zoroaster as the supreme divine authority. In Zoroastrianism, the creator, Ahura Mazda, is all good, and no evil originates from him. Thus, in Zoroastrianism, good and evil have distinct sources, with evil, which they call the Druj, trying to destroy the creation of Mazda, which is Asha, and the good trying to sustain it. So, should we talk about the Valentinian tradition?
Yeah, let's take a break real quick.
Okay. Well, when we come back, we'll talk about that, since it was the most influential in the creation of a lot of the Gnostic faiths.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you know what we're up for next.
Yeah.
Hope this isn't too dry.
Hey, well, I'm hoping it's not dry.
I mean, it's a really... I mean, I don't know if anyone's read anything on the Gnostic religion. It's a really... really, really insanely interesting religion, to practice.
But it can be dry, trying to sum it up.
I mean, because, some of my beliefs...
Well, we are going to get a little more interesting.
Yeah, the more I read about it, this was like years ago, the more I realized I held a lot of Gnostic, some beliefs, kind of,
Yeah.
Running along the lines
we're
of...
We're going to do Father Oz, Song of Adoration, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the Valentinian.
Okay.
Then said the prophet unto the God, I adore thee in the song. I am the Lord of thieves, and I, the inspired fourth speaker of Mentu. For me unveils the veiled sky, the self-slain Ankh Nakatsu, whose words are truth. I invoke, I greet thy presence, all three. Unity uttermost show, I adore the might of thy plan, supreme and terrible God, majestic gods and men, to tremble before thee, I adore thee. Here on the throne of Ra, open the ways of the Khu, lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Khams run through to stir me or still me. Let it fill so that thy light is in me, and its red flames as a sword in my hand to push thy order. There is a secret door that I shall make to establish thy way in all the quarters. These are the adorations, as thou hast written, as it is said. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra, kept mind of our door. I am my favorite old Mentu, the prophet Ankh Nakatsu. But best now mark my breast, now feed the wise tonic, I weave my spell. Show thy star splendor on the wing. Bid me within thine house to dwell, a winged snake of light. Hadi, abide with me,
We're back.
Right. So, okay, so we're going to talk about the Valentinian tradition. So Valentinus was one of the most influential Gnostic Christian teachers of the 2nd century.
He really was.
AD.
I mean, he and a lot of what you see in Gnosticism now in the Gnostic schools are actually based on Valentinus.
Yeah. He founded a movement which spread throughout Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Despite persecution by the Catholic Church, of course, the Valentinian school endured for over 600 years.
Now that's something, because you've got full cultures that didn't last that long.
Yeah. So Valentinus influence persists even today. He's a Gnostic saint of the EGC.
That's just one of the schools.
That's just one of the many schools.
Now, Valentinus was a 2nd century Christian mystic and poet. And he is sometimes referred to as Gnostic because of the importance of that mystical knowledge.
Too much street fighting.
He is sometimes referred to as a Gnostic because of the importance that mystical knowledge, Gnosis, plays in his thought. Valentinus was born in Egypt about 100 AD and educated in nearby Alexandria. There he became a disciple of a Christian teacher called Thetis, who had been a disciple of St. Paul. And Gnosticism is very intertwined with a lot of Christian thought, but it's Christian mysticism, not Christian dogma. So I want people to know that. He claimed that Thetis taught him a secret wisdom that Paul had been taught privately, that Paul had taught privately to his inner circle.
Like many early Christian mystics, Valentinus claimed that he had a vision of the risen Christ. Following his vision, he began his career as a Christian teacher at Alexandria around 120 AD. His esoteric theology quickly attracted a large following in Egypt and Syria. In 136 AD, he went to Rome after stopping briefly in Cyprus. At Rome, he quickly rose to prominence and was widely respected for his eloquence. He was so well regarded in the Roman Church that in 143 AD, he was a candidate for the office of bishop. It seems likely he refused the position. He continued to teach in Rome for at least 10 more years.
No, nothing certain is known about his later career. He may have died in Rome around 155 AD. According to a source, he left Rome and went to Cyprus. Some legends about St. Valentine probably reflect the lasting prestige he enjoyed at Rome. Now, after Valentinus' death, his disciples further developed his ideas and spread them throughout the Roman Empire. This is when it became really dangerous, because the Roman Empire decided, just a moment, you're teaching mysticism, not Christianity, and mysticism does not belong inside the Christian church. Now, this is where the as in Islamic mysticism as opposed to Islamic religion,
right.
And this is interesting. This is all mysticism now, and we want people to know that we're not talking Christian religion, we're talking Christian mysticism. Now that became dangerous around Rome because Christianity as a religion began to feel extremely threatened by the Christian mysticism, which is known as Gnostic.
When the Christians,
known as Gnostic,
threatened,
began to gain popularity and gain more momentum, and people believe that, hey, wait, just a moment, this makes more sense.
It's like the Knights of Templar when they gained.
Right, anything that gains anything gets put onto a cross.
Yeah. And we're going to cover now the secret tradition. So according to Valentinus, there are esoteric teachings which originate from Jesus that were passed on in secret. So would that be in the Aramaic text,
yes.
Right? When Jesus spoke in public, he used metaphors that did not disclose his complete teachings. He only passed them on to his disciples in private. He referred to his... At
this point, we're talking Jesus the Nazarene.
Yeah. He referred to this when he said, "The knowledge about the secrets of the kingdom of the heaven have been given to you, but to the rest it comes by means of parables, so that they may look but not see, and listen but not understand." So that's basically in Luke.
Well, you know what? When I teach in parables.
Yeah, I mean, parables,
and the people who get it get it, and the people who who aren't there, they don't get it, and a lot of people think that parables are full of it, because you used to tell my class, just listen to her parables because there's something to them, and you'd have people come up and complain and say all she does is just tell these stories, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they're supposed to make you think,
right?
They're supposed to be handed everything on a platter. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, anyway.
All great mysticism teachings are done in parables.
Yeah, I mean, even us when we were studying, nothing was handed to us on a freaking platter. I mean,
the whole Bible is a parable.
Yeah, and but man, they're trying to take things literally and out of context. So.
Yeah, and I better not say that too loud because there were people on the corner with big signs, big yellow signs that my sin was was going to cause the end of the world.
I should dig out those business cards I left on our. Wherever they went.
Oh, these ones here? Well, yeah, we got business cards that were left that says, turn to Jesus or burn in hell. Trust Jesus. Repent ye sinner. Sin, Jesus or hellfire. Or Jesus hates sin. Jesus or hellfire. God is angry with the wicked every day. Jesus said, go and sin no more. Jesus saves. Then you turn it around and it says, warning. Liars, thieves, druggies, witches, adulterers, homos, hypocrites, atheists, drunkards, murderers, baby killers, perverts, warmongers.
Like the way we all come together.
Blasphemers, sex addicts, unbelievers, sinners, porn freaks, filthy masturbators. Hellfire awaits you. Yeah, that's.
I don't know. Do they want to pass it on to their priests?
Seriously, here's for you, Father. Somebody was telling a joke on a site, and it said, how do you, because they were talking about separation of church and state, and somebody said, how do you separate a priest from an altar boy? And somebody else said a crowbar. I'm going to get crucified one of these days. I'm going to get stoned out on the street. They're going to drag me out and stone me.
They're only going back to their roots, I guess.
But I'll own up to it, though.
All right, now that have we lost track of what I was saying? All right, that's right. We're talking about Jesus.
Just talking in metaphors.
Yeah, talking metaphors. So, similar. Blah, 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 blah.
God, our mouths were not ready for tonight's show.
Yes. Similarly, when St. Paul encountered the risen Lord in a vision, he received the secret teachings from him. Valentinus claimed that he learned the secret teachings from that. Hang on. Damn it, I can't pronounce that.
Where are you at?
Theodus. Yeah. Now, who is this fellow? As soon as you're done typing.
According to Valentinus, the secret tradition provides the key that is essential for a complete understanding of Jesus' message. One of his followers put this in the following words. The scriptures are ambiguous, and the truth cannot be extracted from them by those who are ignorant of tradition. The Valentinians claimed that the secret teachings are meaningful only to those who are spiritually mature. Wasn't that the case in almost every religion? Mm-hmm. If a person who was not ready to receive them, they seem like nonsense because their value can only be judged on a spiritual basis. According to Valentinian tradition, which is what we're quoting here, Paul and the other apostles revealed these teachings only to those who were spiritually mature. Mm-hmm. Well, it's how many classes have I taught? And I said I just can't take it because they're not ready. Mm-hmm. They're not ready to hear what I'm saying, and they're getting lost and confused.
Right. Okay. Valentinians believed that God is an incomprehensible deity and cannot be known directly. Therefore, he defines accurate description. He is infinite, without beginning or end, and is the ultimate origin of all things. He encompasses all things without being encompassed. Everything, including the world, lies within the deity and continues to be part of it. The Godhead manifests itself through a process of self-unfolding in the subsequent multiplicity of being while maintaining its unity.
Valentinians believe that God is androgynous. That's another important thing. Mm-hmm. Because you've got a lot of people who said male or female. Mm-hmm. And it was frequently depicted, they frequently depicted him as a male-female dyad.
why wouldn't? Even his angels were.
Yeah. This is related to the notion that God provides the universe with both form and substance. Mm-hmm. The feminine aspect of the deity is called silence, grace, and thought. Silence is God's primordial state of tranquility and self-awareness. She is also the act of creative thought that makes all subsequent states of beings substantial. The masculine aspect of God is depth, also called ineffable and first father. Depth, who is the profoundly incomprehensible, all-encompassing,
encompassing. Oh, damn it! You made me do it. Damn it!
Don't try to help me. Just stop.
When you start, you lose me.
Encompassing.
Thank you.
Aspect of the deity. He is essentially passive, yet when moved to action by his feminine thought, he gives the universe form. So they work in conjunction with each other, almost bouncing off each other in a polarity type action, which I think is kind of unique. Do you know what I mean? Where depth, all of a sudden, where there's this depth that's coming in, the feminine aspect comes in and brings in the creative force that allows,
Well, feminine is creation.
Right.
Obviously, because of that, even if you go to the birth process.
Right.
So here's their thoughts on the sun. The origin of the universe is described as a process of emanation from the Godhead. The male and female aspects of the Father, acting in conjunction, manifested themselves in the Son. The Sun is also often depicted by Valentinians as a male-female dryad. And when I say the sun, I don't mean like the sun in the sky. I mean like the sun is in male air.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Male air kind of thing, yeah. The sun manifests himself in 26 spiritual entities, or aeons, arranged into male-female pairs. The arrangement and names of the aeons will not be discussed here, obviously, because it's going to take forever.
It would be forever.
Yeah. They represent the energies eminent within the sun and were seen as part of his personality. Together they constitute the fullness of the Godhead.
The fall. Now, the aeons who are manifested by the sun are conceived as having some degree of psychological independence. They lie within God, but are separated from him by a limit or boundary. As a result, they do not know the one who brought them into being. The aeons sense that they were incomplete and long to know their origin.
The longing passed to Sophia, which is Greek for wisdom, the youngest of the aeons.
And this is where the whole Sophia thing comes into, because there's huge cults for Sophia and
in
huge
Gnosticism, particularly, yeah.
Yeah, Sophia is like the thing because
it's all about the wisdom.
It is, because it's wisdom.
The basis of their whole.
And so when you hear the Gnostics say, "Are you see anything about Sophia?" Well, they're not really talking about
a female.
They're talking about wisdom.
Mm-hmm. On behalf of the whole fullness, she took up the quest to know the Supreme Parent. She attempted to know him by thinking alone, something that is impossible. As a result, she became separated from her consort and fell into a state of deficiency and suffering. Through the power of limit, Sophia was divided in two. Her higher part was returned to her consort, but her lower part was separated from the fullness into a lower realm, along with the deficiency and suffering. This lower realm is identical to the physical world. That's
how come Sophia can identify.
Can come down even.
Yeah.
And in part, Now,
Valentinians envision that the universe is a series of concentric spheres. The innermost sphere is the world of deficiency, where the lower Sophia was exiled. Enclosing this is the fullness, where the aeons are. The aeons enclosed within the sun. The outermost sphere, which encompasses the sun, is where the Father, depth and silence is. There is a boundary or limit between the God and fullness. There is a second boundary or limit between the fullness and the deficiency. And just as the fullness is the product of Godhead and lies within it, so also the realm of deficiency is a product of the fullness and lies within it. Now the deficiency arose as a result of ignorance, and it will be dissolved through knowledge. So everything is separated, but it all lies within itself. And the separations are more of a an illusion that can be simply dissolved by wisdom.
Through the Through the mediation of the Son, the eons within the fullness were given knowledge, which is the gnosis of God, and received rest. All the aeons then joined together in celebration and became completely integrated into the personality of the Son. The reintegrated Son was also called the Savior. He is destined to be the male partner of the bridegroom of the fallen Sophia. He is surrounded by a retinue of angels who were brought forth to honor the aeons.
The lower Sophia, trapped in the realm of deficiency, continued to suffer the emotional torments of grief, fear, and confusion. As a result of her ignorance, she was trapped in a state of illusion and was unable to distinguish what was real and unreal. She underwent a conversion when she thought of the light, and she began to plead for assistance. In response, her bridegroom, which is always referred to as the Savior, and his army of angels descended through the limit to her. Now, through knowledge, or gnosis, of the eternal realm, she was freed of illusion and suffering. And that is what really people are trying to do.
Yes, right?
Exactly. There's your Gnostic sex magic. And so what you're really trying to do is you're really trying to plead in Gnosticism. You're pleading. You are understanding and aligning yourself with the lower Sophia, so that you can actually go through the lower Sophia, or the lower wisdom, to the higher wisdom, to the higher Sophia.
Because we're existing in that realm, so we have to go through there, obviously.
Frauder says he won't charge for it. Frauder. Yeah.
The lower Sophia rejoiced at the sight of the Savior and his angels, and brought forth spiritual seeds in their image. The seeds were the spiritual element present in every Christian. For this reason, the seeds were referred to...
Yeah, but when we say Christian, we mean mystic.
Mystics, obviously. For this reason, the seed are referred to as the spiritual church. Just as the Savior is the bridegroom of the lower Sophia, so also the angels will be the bridegrooms of the spiritual seeds at the end of time. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. 3 states of being or substances came into being from Sophia as a result of her quest to know God. First, the illusion which characterizes material existence came from ignorance and suffering. It is personified as the devil. Second, came soul, which comes from the conversion as an intermediate stage between ignorance and knowledge. It is personified as the craftsman who forms the material world. Last, the spiritual seed came from her knowledge, or the gnosis, and is personified in the lower Sophia herself.
Despite the fact that the lower Sophia was no longer ignorant, the ignorance was not fully dissipated. The spiritual seeds were immature and needed training. For this purpose, the creation of the material world was necessary. The lower Sophia and the Savior secretly influenced the craftsman to create the material world in the image of the fullness. The craftsman is ignorant of his mother and thinks that he acts alone, but he unconsciously acts as her agent. Let's go into the human beings.
Well, before we go into human beings, let's take a little break.
All right.
Okay?
Why not?
Why not? Because we can. Let's listen to a little song here, just so that you and I can catch our breath for a bit.
Yeah.
Flow, come
human beings that were created by the craftsman. In addition to a physical body, Valentinians believed that people were also composed of like 3 non-corporeal elements: a demonic part, a rational soul, which is the psyche, and a spiritual seed. Human beings were divided into 3 types, depending on which 3 natures is dominant within them. That is why Adam and Eve is described as actually having 3 children inside the Gnostic religion, which is way different because it's Cain, Abel, and Seth. They are prototypes of the carnal, animate, and spiritual human beings respectively. The Valentinian tradition draws sharp distinctions between the human Jesus and the divine mystical Jesus. Now that's where they take their break from the Christianity. The human Jesus was born the true son of Mary and Joseph by a special dispensation. His body is substantial with Sophia and her spiritual seed. When he was 30 years old, he went to John the Baptist to be baptized. As soon as he went down into the water, the divine Jesus, referred to as the Spirit of the thought of the Father, descended upon him in the form of a dove. This is actually what the Gnostics believe is the true virgin birth.
Right.
And the resurrection from the dead, for he was a reborn of the Virgin Spirit through the baptism.
Jesus taught publicly in parables and riddles, as we discussed earlier. And to his disciples, his closest disciples at that, he revealed the whole truth about the fall of Sophia and the coming restoration of the fullness. According to Valentinian tradition, Mary Magdalene was an important member of this inner circle. And how many times have we discussed that?
How many times has the History Channel said it?
Yeah. And still
saying it. Mary of Magdalene. It's one of the most important important people in the church because she had the most wisdom.
Yeah, and he always went to her. She is seen as an image of the lower Sophia and is described as Jesus' consort in the Gospel of Philip. That's what I meant, like his consort. I guess you would say that. Yeah, you would. The divine Jesus experienced all the emotions of a human being, including fear, grief, and confusion in the garden. However, only the human Jesus suffered pain and died on the cross. Now that's Gnostic belief. There's other beliefs that Jesus did not die. Right.
And there's, his divine aspect transcends physical suffering and death. When his physical body died, his non-corporeal spirit rose up from it.
These are really short. Following the crucifixion, Valentinians believe that Jesus continued to appear to his disciples for 18 months, not the 40 days reported in the Acts of the Apostles.
No, that's something, because now they're really breaking from tradition.
Right. During this period, he instructed the disciples plainly about the Father. Even after his ascension, he continued to appear to people in visions, most notably St. Paul and Valentinus.
Now, for redemption, according to the Valentinians, people manifest their true nature by their response to the message that the divine Jesus, or the mystical Jesus, was trying to give out, using the parable of the sower. They explain that through Jesus, Sophia sows the spiritual seed in all who hear the message. In some people, the seed falls on the path, and they do not respond to it at all. Such people are carnal by nature. And others, the seed is choked by the thorns, which are worldly concerns or material attributes or material possessions. They are hesitant and are unable to go beyond the level of rational explanations. Such people are dominated by the rational element or soul, and in others the seed was planted in the good earth, and they actually bear the spiritual fruit. Such people are Gnostic or spiritual Christians.
People bear fruit spiritually by attaining a state of mystical knowledge in which they are joined with their angel who accompanies the Savior. Awakened from the drunken stupor of ignorance and freed of suffering, they recognize their true spiritual nature. This is the true resurrection. From This is a true resurrection from the dead. That is, from the death of ignorance. This resurrection does not take place in the afterlife. It must be experienced in the here and now.
Which is interesting because they believe that people are actually really almost, let's put it into terms that can be understood. They're almost like zombies that are walking around right now in an ignorant, delusional, mindless state, soulless state. And until they receive this wisdom or knowledge and they actually go past the physical and they get away from their carnal and they get away from their material possessions and they start looking at, look, the Porsche is not my enlightenment. That you remain in a dead state and you can't resurrect into a live state or an enlightened state until such time that you have grown this way. Now, it's interesting only in the aspect of, if you've listened to all our shows, and some of you guys have, a lot of you have, it's the tree of life, and it's almost crossing the da'ath at that point. It's the idea of the da'ath and getting into the top three, Kether and Kether and Hakma.
Take a sip.
Bina. No, I'm choking here. But it's interesting because it really does. If you look at it in that aspect, it's crossing the da'ath. Right. One must travel all this path to become enlightened, understanding the parables.
It's everyone when they search for Kether. I mean,
it's to Kether.
It's just a Kether.
It's just a Kether. It's just another format of Kethering, and the thing of it is, it's just another format of passing through the da'ath, and every one of the paths on the tree of life is a parable to get to the house, to get to the sephiroth of the house.
A lot of people are concerned with the thing of, do I really have to give away all my prized possessions to be able to attain Kether?
And the answer is no.
Yeah.
The answer is no. You do not have to give away your prized possessions to attain Kether, but you cannot hold those prized possessions above Kether.
Yeah.
You can keep your stuff but you can't let your stuff keep you.
Yeah, so every couple of years it's good to do a bit of a purge.
We're doing that.
Yeah, every couple of years it just automatically happens. The purge kicks in.
The purge kicks in, and some of our books that have been prized possessions end up out there. Like we've got one from Crowley that's it's a highly hard book to find, but we've got it and it's for sale and it's like $450 and it's what's it called?
I always forget.
But it's one of it was one of his greatest works.
It's such a slim book, you know.
It's a slim book.
Really gave it much of a thought.
But it actually is one of his good works, and it falls into it. I just can't remember the damn
you know what?
name.
It really doesn't matter, actually. All right.
And so. And here's the thing. There are prized possessions that will probably never leave my hands, but they are useful prized possessions. They are possessions that I use to create from. Take our 1910 Transcendental Magic by Eliphas Levi. It's got the extra 150 pages in it. We probably will never let go of that book.
Yeah, it's the Teotech King.
The what?
The Teotech King.
Teo,
as in T-E-H.
Oh, Teotech King.
That's why I always forget the second word. It's like Teotech.
I forget the word the first word. I always remember te.
I remember the tail. So
together we can put together a title.
Yeah.
But and there's some things that you don't give away because they're useful. Like I was just talking about the transcendental.
What? The transcendental what magic?
Magic book like that one because it's useful.
Oh, I was going to say.
And although it's a prized possession, it's one that we continue to use.
I was going to say you better not give them.
But it's one that we continue to use.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's resource books.
Those are resource books, and those are what I consider to be prized possessions. Now
they're a valuable resource for it, right?
They are. They are.
I don't know if I'd call it a prized possession.
It's true. Valentinians describe the process of union with the divine in terms of general of a general idea that can be realized in the individual here and now. First, the person spiritually ascends from the craftsman and the lower powers to join Sophia, the Savior, and the angel. Rejoicing with all of the saved, the person is joined with their angel and enters the fullness. Such a person is in the world of not of it, which is really cool. What world are you in? Not of it.
Not of it.
They have already attained a spiritual existence such that for them, the world has become the fullness. So you're not in the world. You're not of the world. You're not of it.
Isn't that in a sense creating your own?
Yeah, it's a creating of your own.
Which is what I was trying to tell one of your students, the one that was getting all hung up on.
Oh.
The limitations of this world. It's like, well, then create your own.
Right.
You don't have to reside.
Well, it's the exact same thing as an astral temple.
Yeah, it's as you don't. That's what I was telling him too. So you can create your astral. You can go elsewhere. You don't have to be bound by this one. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, I think I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, what he thinks. But anyway, ethics. So, despite the untruths spread by their enemies, the Valentinists insisted on the highest possible ethical standard for members of their school. They believed that it was possible to lead a sinless existence through perfect knowledge of God's will. Sin was seen as an expression of ignorance. And as it says in the Gospel of Philip, the one who has knowledge is a free person, but the free person does not sin. For the one who sins is a slave of sin.
And that does make a lot of sense.
And sin according to who?
Well, no, sin is ignorance.
That's what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean?
See, the parable is not about sin of the carnal flesh or any of the commandments. Sin is ignorance.
That's what I'm saying. But the thing is, when people define sin, that's ignorant to me.
Right, because, when people define, you get the people that go, well, to sin is to lie. Well, no, not necessarily. Sin is ignorance, period. Mm-hmm. It's just ignorance. Mm-hmm. It's absolute ignorance. It's when it goes back to even the beginning rant tonight. That if you wanted to come down to it, those who don't own what they say are ignorant, and therefore they sin.
Yeah,
because you're being ignorant.
Right.
Or the person who won't open their mind and says, no, there's only one religion, there's only one true religion, and I can't look outside any of the other religions. Well, you're ignorant.
But doesn't it come also down to the different schools of perceived sin? What is thought of as sin? I mean, I agree with, obviously, you.
Yes, it does.
Because if you were to explain that to say a Christian, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And then what I would say is to, and this is only my opinion. It's just my opinion, and my opinion only. Because every school of thought and every religion is going to have a perceived what is a sin. My perceived sin is ignorance. Mm-hmm. Ignorance of everything that is out there. In other words, you're a wolf, not a squirrel.
Right.
And people who've listened to the show knows what I'm talking about when I say you're a wolf, you're not a squirrel. You've joined a pack, you think what the pack thinks. You haven't gone and explored everything and have been open-minded. To me, intolerance is ignorance, and ignorance is a sin. And so any religion that preaches, practices, or supports intolerance is a sinful religion. Mm-hmm. And everybody in there, no matter how well they live their lives, are still leading a sinful existence. When and I know it's a political thing, but when you say gays can't get married because it's a sin, how ignorant of you.
Exactly.
Okay? When you say, well, an abortion is this or that, how ignorant of you to say that. It's you just want to look at people, especially with the gay marriage. When somebody goes, well, let's take example my aunt who's broken up how many marriages?
Oh my goodness.
Yes, right. I'm gonna crucify her too. I don't care. She's broken up. I don't know how many.
And adultery. I mean,
adultery. She's committed adultery.
All these things that she holds holy.
She's committed adultery. She has
coveted the husband of another.
Coveted the husband of another. Yeah. She has married and remarried and had sex outside the marriages and all these things. And when the gay marriage prop came up, she said, I have to vote for Prop 8, it's actually a hate prop.
Yeah, it's a hate
And when asked why, she said, because I believe in family values.
which we automatically laughed at.
And I just looked at her and I said, what family values do you have?
Hypocrite. Yeah.
Right? And she goes, well, I have to follow what the religion that I follow is. And I said, you're ignorant. Mm-hmm. And to me, you're the most sinful person on the face of this earth because your ignorance is so astoundingly overwhelming.
It's just astounding.
It's just astounding. I mean, you just makes you want your jaw to drop that you would say family values at the same time that you've lived your life the way you have with what you've done and what I've heard you've done. You know, things I've heard. Yeah. But to sit and say, I've got family values.
Yes, they were. I mean,
do you know what I mean? And to me, that's ignorance. And to me, no matter how well she, whatever, that she's going by what her religion teaches, and the religion teaches her, no matter how ignorant and sinful she's being inside her own life, mm-hmm. her religion teaches an intolerance. And the intolerance, because she's married to somebody from Tennessee, which Christian. Mm. Well, he's because he's heavy born. I think he's almost born again. Yeah, I think he's close.
That's probably a different thing.
Yeah, I think he's close to being born again. Anyway, because she's adopted that thought pattern to an extent, she's become intolerant of anything, and she can't look outside the box. She can't look at anything else, and she can't look at common sense. And here's what she said: if gays were allowed to be married, what would happen to my marriage? I mean, my marriage would be broken up. Well, I think you do a good job on your own.
Yeah.
Of breaking up marriages. I don't think the gays have anything to do with it, to be honest with you. You do enough damage on your own. You're like a little tornado through many marriages, you know. So Fodder's right. Look at all the gay mystics. Many mystics were bisexual. A lot of them were. A lot of the occult mystics mm-hmm. were too. You had Waite, Mathers, mm-hmm. Even Levi was reportedly mm-hmm. Bisexual. Crowley
mm-hmm. was bi.
You had a lot of the founding fathers of the cult that were gay, either mm-hmm. openly gay or closeted gay, because you couldn't be openly gay back then, or bisexual. And it is reported that a lot that all the way through Christianity, the mystics
in the ancient world, it was really acceptable.
It really was.
This is outside of any kind of religion.
Really, culture.
It's a societal thing.
Just as a culture thing. Yeah. Take the Greeks.
Yeah. I mean, really, it was like, you into manhood being, it was to have sex with another man.
Right, and you have a lot of things that try to break those boundaries.
Yeah.
You have a lot of groups now. There are some OTO groups that try to break down those boundaries and say, look, mm-hmm. no, it's one of the things you do. Mm-hmm. Because they're trying to break down the ignorance and the boundaries of a lot of things. And to me, ignorance as a whole equals intolerance. And intolerance itself is a sin because it breeds more ignorance. And the thing is the worst thing that I can call you is ignorant. Mm-hmm. It is. I can call people so many names. But there's two worst things that can come out of my mouth to any of my students. Mm-hmm. One, you're ignorant. Mm-hmm. And two, I'm disappointed. Right. It's the two things that I think devastate my students, is when I look at them and I go, you are being so ignorant right now that I'm not sure I can teach you. Mm-hmm. And I've come into you and I've told you, there are students out there that are ignorant, so ignorant, I'm not going to get through to them. And I'm not getting through to them. And I don't think I can get through to them, and I don't know how to get through to them.
No, and you can get through to most people.
Most people. Either that, or I walk out, and I say, I'm disappointed. Mm-hmm. I'm disappointed because I had high hopes for you. Mm. and you've let me down, and it's not because you let me down because you were late to class. It's because you've allowed this, and I do believe that I had a huge Gnostic view of the world, as there is only one sin, and that sin is ignorance.
Right.
And within that ignorance is intolerance and the incapacity, the incapability of seeing outside anything else, of seeing outside what you believe in, opening your mind up, and maybe incorporating something. I mean, God forbid you might learn something new.
Right.
We wouldn't want you to learn something new that made you question anything. And that's a sin. Not questioning should be a sin too, because that's ignorance. That's why when my students go, "Oh, it's a stupid question," I go, "The only stupid question is the one that you do not ask me." And that's the worst thing you can do is not ask me the question that's on your mind. They say, "Well, I'll sound ignorant." Well, you'll remain ignorant until you ask me the question, so that it can be answered. And if I can't answer it, you see me in the middle of class.
Ignorance comes in the form of statements, not in questions.
Right.
Anyway, so you can't really have an ignorant question.
Right, and you'll see me in the middle of class. I go running back here to the bookcase because somebody has asked me something, and the answer's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm researching it because I want to give them the right answer. I don't want to give them a half-ass answer. And the same way we do the show. Right. We don't want to give half-ass answers, but yeah, there is no higher religion than the truth. There really isn't. And look, I'm going to get all kinds of typical statements here. The truth shall set you free. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. The truth will set you free. And Gnostics believe that as the highest thing. So anyway, sorry, rant.
Oh no, what are you even starting about? Okay, now I've been yawning. No.
The Sermon on the Mount was seen as a guide to leading an ethical life. According to the teacher, honey, I always have trouble with this name. Pod. Help me.
I'm sorry. Ptolemy? Yeah.
The law of love taught by Jesus abolished unjust laws, transformed other laws to a spiritual sense, and fulfilled the true divine law. While they did reject wealth and temporal authority, Valentinians never rejected marriage and raising children. According to the Alexandrian teacher Theodotus, marriage was necessary so that those with the spiritual seed might be born. Despite his advice, some members of the school practiced celibacy. Now, this is where the church went with the celibacy thing. The idea is that if you had this gnosis, if you had this, you wanted to you wanted marriage so that the seed could be planted, and yet some people went celibacy is the way. Well, no, because and what they were doing is they were saying, well, celibacy takes away the carnal self, and therefore it brings out a higher self. Well, it doesn't, because what it does is it pents it up. So, and now you know what? We're going to get into some interesting things, and this is where this part of the show actually becomes the most interesting to me.
Can you take a break for a second?
Oh, okay, let's take a break before we go into it, because what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the saints that they believed in and how many things they the saints and some of the modern saints, and how they have gone across religions and boundaries, and it's really interesting. Let's go ahead and take a slight break. And we're going to get to this. This to me is the most exciting part of the show, and probably everybody's like, you're a geek, but whatever. I am a geek, and it doesn't matter.
And she knelt and
Okay. This is where it gets interesting because now we get to get into all the different saints that they include in. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And this is where, do you know what I mean? This is where it becomes interesting. As soon as you're done telling somebody off to own their shit.
Mm-hmm. There's always one psycho out there that just what is it this week?
This week
it's gotta be that moon.
Yeah, and you know what? The people need to own up.
it's like fuck off. I'm so sorry.
It's getting ridiculous.
I'm tired of people. Oh man, where was I?
Oh, we're gonna go into like some of the modern saints and stuff, and
okay.
Because I think this is interesting because now we get to expand everybody on some of the greatest leaders all across the philosophies. This is where I become a big geek and be like, ooh, yes.
Oh my God, this is interesting. Actually, it's because we mentioned that work, the Tao Te King.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah.
That's why you were getting it wrong.
Yeah.
That's right, that's where it was. Okay, so the Gnostics believe in modern saints as well. And like you said, it's combining of the philosophies. So Tao Tzu was a famous Chinese philosopher who is believed to have lived in approximately the 4th century BC during the 100 schools of thoughts and warring states periods. He is credited with writing the seminal Taoist work, the Tao Te Ching. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the Tao Te Ching, among others. He became a popular deity in Taoist religion's pantheon.
Yeah, this is important. It's important why we're mentioning all of these people is because this is considered the seeds to go into the Upper Sophia, is to understand these great philosophers and what they wrote.
Right.
This is why it's kind of interesting, but most important, and people, because I know people have been like, why are we mentioning like Gautama Buddha in Tao and Lao Tzu in Krishna? Because it was considered that they held the greater seeds. And so let's go to Gautama Buddha was an Asian spiritual leader who lived between approximately 563 BC and 483 BC. He was born Siddhartha Gautama, and it's the descendant of the Gautama whose aims are achieved, and he later became the Buddha, literally enlightened one, or awakened one. He is commonly known as Sakyamuni, the sage of the Shaka clan, and as Tathagata, which means thus gone one. So his teachings are important to understand for enlightenment. This is such a great thing.
Krishna, and in Sanskrit, Krishna translated as black or all attractive one, is an important deity in the Hindu religion. In some Hindu traditions, he is the 8th avatar, the incarnation of Vishnu, and in others the 9th, and yet others he is considered to be the source of all incarnations. The story of Krishna's life on earth is an important part of the Indian epic Mahabharata, which contains astronomical references used by some devout Hindus to date the events before the end of the last Dwapara Yuga, also known as the Copper Age, approximately 5,100 years ago, in 3100 BCE. However, while Krishna plays a key role in the Mahabharata, it is in the Srimad Bhagavata Purana that thousands of lines are dedicated solely to extolling his life and philosophy.
See, Krishna is very important too. And a lot of people go, oh no, I don't want to touch Krishna.
Why?
But because I think the Hare Krishnas.
Oh, well, even I wasn't. We were assaulted by those in Australia on a daily basis. But
Tot is the Greek name given to the Egyptian god of the moon, the lunar deity, wisdom, writing, magic, measurement of time, among other things. It's also the Egyptian god. As the cycles of the moon organized much of the Egyptian society's civil and religious rituals and events, so Thoth was seen as primarily the regulator of such things. So a lot of teachings of Thoth, or to understand the teachings of Thoth, would bring in Gnosis.
Oops. Okay. So Moses, the son of Amram and his wife, was a Levite. A legendary Hebrew liberator, leader, lawgiver, prophet, and historian. If he is a historical figure, he may have lived between the 18th century BC and the 13th century BC. According to the Hebrew Bible, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. He received the Ten Commandments of Judaism from God on Mount Sinai. The Torah contains the life story of Moses and his people till his death at the age of 120 years. Moses' greatest legacy was probably expounding the doctrine of monotheism, which was not widely accepted at the time, codifying it in Jewish religion with the first and important commandment, and punishing polytheists. He is revered as a prophet in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
That's interesting because it's the three religions, it's the two religions, Christianity and Judaism,
right,
that fight the Islamic religion, all consider the same man a prophet.
I know. I don't get it.
You have the same foundations, but let's bomb each other.
I know. It's always a joke.
It really is. Let's talk about Dionysus. Also referred to as Bacchus, and identified, represented not only an intoxicating power of wine, but also its social and beneficial influences, and the vital energies expressed in the growth of trees and vines. He was viewed as the promoter of civilization, a lawgiver, and lover of peace, as well as the patron deity of both agriculture and the theater. So you're looking at a really well-rounded education to be a Gnostic.
Hermes?
Hermes?
No Hermes? Alright.
I don't know Hermes.
Well, in Greek mythology, it was the god of travelers, shepherds, land travel, orators, literature, cunning, poets, athletics, weights and measures, and thieves, and the messenger of the gods to humans. He's the son of Zeus and a nymph named Mare. Hermes was equivalent to the Roman god Mercury and the Etruscan terms. Hermes was born in a cave on Mount Selene in Peloponnesus between Achaea and Arcadia. His origin on Mount Selene explains the origin of the epithet for Hermes. He is also referred to as Ananias. As a psychopomp, Hermes was known as Psychopompus, which is the conductor of the soul. The Roman Mercury later absorbed the De Lucrene, early gods of commerce and wealth, and were referred to by that name. And also is also known as a pile of microstones.
Yeah. Pan is the Greek god who watches over shepherds and their flocks. He has the hindquarters, legs, and horns of a goat in the same manner as a satyr, and it's one of the deities within the archetype of the horned god. There's legends that he's actually the son of Zeus, and some say he's the son of Hermes. His mother is said to be a nymph. His nature and name, Pan, means all. He's alluring in many ways. He seems to be identical to Protagonist. One of the famous legends of Pan includes the origin of his trademark panpipes. A syrinx was a beautiful nymph beloved by the satyrs and other wood dwellers. She scorned them all. As she was returning from the hunt one day, Pan met her. She ran away and didn't stop to his compliments, and he pursued her until she came back to the riverbank, where he overtook her. She only had time to call on the water nymphs for help, but just as Pan laid hands on her, she was turned into river reeds. When the air blows through the reeds, it produces a melody. The god took some of the reeds to make the instrument, which he called a syrinx, in the honor of the nymph. Echo was a nymph who was a great singer. Now, what it's talking about is the idea of the spheres of music being that of love, but not only that, but going across the ages. Echo was a nymph who was a great singer and dancer, and scorned love of many men. This angered Pan, a lecherous god, and he instructed his followers to kill her. Echo was torn to pieces and spread all over the earth. The goddess of the earth, Gaia, received the pieces of Echo, whose voice remains repeating the last words of others. Echo and Pan first had one child, Lambe. Pan also loved a nymph called Pitys. who was turned into a pine tree to escape him. And so it's it's the idea of understanding these. I know, poor Pan. This whole idea of understanding these parables and what they actually mean. Now, people are going, "Oh, that's just sad." He's lecherous, but there wasn't. There was more meaning to it. And one of the things that I tell people when they talk about it, I said, when he played the panpipes, he was making love to the nymph that he loved.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, he will never have the love that he wanted.
That's right. My earphones are picking up something, don't I? Oh, Priapus was a Roman and Greek phallic god of fertility and protector of gardens. He is generally considered to be the child of Aphrodite and Dionysus, or Adonis, Hermes, and Pan or Zeus, depending on the source, So the ass, I should say the animal ass, was his sacred animal. I always have a habit of saying ass instead of ass.
Kim, an Egyptian hold on, I'm sorry. Osiris is one of the most important of the ancient Egyptian deities. He is a life, death, rebirth deity, and one of the and he was eventually buried in the city of Abydos, of which he was the patron deity. Osiris was the Egyptian god of the underworld, as well as fertility and agriculture. With his wife Isis, he was the father of Horus. So again, you want to study these gods because these gods have the parables of their lives hold the seeds of Sophia.
Mm-hmm. Where's that thumping coming from?
Car outside.
Oh, okay.
Some jacknut with a large speaker. Melchizedek is a character in the Bible who appeared in Genesis to the patriarch Abraham. He is called King of Salem, and he's believed to be ancient Jerusalem, which and the priest of the Most High God in Genesis 14:18. Reference is brief in the Old Testament. He first appears bringing bread and wine to Abraham after his victory over the 4 kings who had besieged Sodom and Gomorrah and had taken his nephew Lot prisoner. In return, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tithe of the bounty that he took in battle. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High and blessed Abraham, saying, "Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God by Most High, who delivered our enemies to our hand." He then gave him 10th of everything. Now, he represents the priestly line through which a future king of Israel's David line was ordained, and the future king in Christian belief, Jesus Christ, is referred to as priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. We also have Kim. In Egyptian mythology, Kim was a god of fertility and the patron deity of the Egyptian civilization and art. He was usually portrayed wearing women's clothing. Now that's interesting. There's a little doubt that the Egyptian god is related to the Old Testament character Ham, son of Noah, and what are you doing?
I'm just not.
Of Mizraim, the Hebrew term for Egypt. Now, Ham is rumored to have engaged in homosexual acts with his unconsenting and intoxicating father Noah. In light of this historical account, Arabs have traditionally called Egypt Chema, or the land of Chem. This is likely the use of the word alchemy, which, according to the Arab nations, originated in Egypt.
So Amun.
Yes.
And you can also, alternatively known as Amon. He
Yes.
was one of the Ogdoad and was married to Ipet. This is in the Egyptian tradition, obviously we're talking about. He was also a Berber god, but there were differences between the Berber Amon and the Egyptian Amon. The Greeks honored the Berber Amon, and the Phoenicians mixed their god Baal with the Berber Amon to create the Baal Amon. So I guess we'll Egyptian in the beginning that I was talking about.
Yeah, and then you have the Egyptian. Well, Baal
is
was Sumerian.
Sumerian, right? Yeah.
So now you've got Sumerian coming in. In Egyptian mythology, Mentu was a hawk god of war. Baka, the bull god, was his avatar. Mentu's name, technically just transcribed from Egyptian hieroglyphs, was MNTW. Because of the difficulty in transcribing Egyptian, it's often realized as Mentu, Montu, Menthu, Ment, Month, Montu, and Mont, just in case. And it literally means nomad. He was a powerful royal god. He made pharaohs victorious in battles. He was the patron of all manner of martial arts and warfare, strength, and masculine virility. And so it's interesting because the more and more you learn about all the philosophies, the more and more they keep saying martial arts, martial arts, martial arts, martial arts, martial arts.
I swear to God, you've covered that in your class too.
Yes, is it true that Amon is the origin of Amen? Yes, It is. It is. When they say Amen, they're actually saying Amon, which is a god in Egypt, which is kind of cool. It's funny. Anyway.
Oh my God, I can't believe that's what you said. It's funny. It's kind of cool.
Cool.
I like that because I laugh every time Christians use it.
Yeah. But again, you've got this thing of martial arts, and martial arts come up quite often. In when you start talking about this, and I think that's kind of interesting. He was pictured as a falcon-headed or bull-headed man who wore the sun disk with two plumes on his head. Montu was also associated with the white bull with a black face called Butchus. Now, Egypt's greatest general kings called themselves mighty bulls, the sons of Montu, and it was thought that Montu was the son of Ammon and Mut. Amen.
I think we've had that discussion too, like laughing at them. I was just like, it just reminds me of an old discussion.
Because you know what? You get a lot of the high ceremonial magicians, and at the very end of it, it's like, blah, 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 amen. And I go, you probably use tetragrammaton too, don't you? Because, first of all, where it says amen, you should be saying amun. Calling down that energy. And where it says tetragrammaton, you're supposed to say yod hey thou hey, because all you're saying is 4-letter word when you say tetragrammaton.
And that's ever so,
vague.
Holy.
Holy, right? But I love it because you've got the people who go, it's because they'll do it. They'll go, tetragrammaton.
You're not even vibrating. They're vibrating. It's like, what are you vibrating?
Like, what
precisely?
What 4-letter word are you saying?
Jade is going, what 4-letter word?
And why are you saying amen? It's Hamun. Again, a lot of things written in code, and it has to be deciphered, and people go, and I've had so many discussions with people that go, no, it says tetragrammaton, they mean tetragrammaton. I go, do you know what tetragrammaton actually means? Tetra, 4, grammaton, letter word. It's Greek, figure it out. 4-letter word, so you can sit there and go, 4-letter word, amen. But which 4-letter word are you talking about? You better not piss me off because you'll have to own up to it. And then,
even grammar comes from that word.
Grammar, yeah, exactly. And so you get it is funny. Not only do the Christians do it, because Frater was saying he laughs every time Christians use it. I laugh every time high ceremonial magicians use it.
I know.
Because they don't.
It's like where are they getting it from?
What are you doing? Everything's deciphered. Tetragrammaton, and then they go agla.
Oh my God, they even say the Agla, that's right, I just forgot.
And Agla is Athaskala Liram Adonai.
Yeah.
And they go, Agla.
Because the sigil has the 4 letters
in it, right? And they go, Agla. And I go, no, you're supposed to say the whole 4 words. And they're like, what 4 words? That's the word, Agla. Amen. And I go, stop it. And they just like, tetragrammaton. And I'm like, stop. Just stop because you're hurting me. You're making me laugh, pee my pants, but I'm I'm dropping IQ points as you continue to go. But yeah, it is funny, Frauder. But it's not just Christians. You get the ceremonial magicians. Amen. And I'm like, you didn't really say that, right? Well, it was written in the book. Well, so is Tetragrammaton and Agla, but you don't say that, do you? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God.
Anyway.
Dear God. Anyhow.
That's the club, by the way. Starting early.
Oh, nice.
We just love our street.
So the little from behind us is the club that's starting early that's going to get the police called in about 5 in between shows.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in Greek mythology, Heracles was the demigod, son of Zeus and Alcmene, the granddaughter of Perseus, and the wife of Amphitryon. In Roman mythology, he was called Hercules. He was arguably the greatest of the mythical Greek heroes, best known for his superhuman strength, and many stories are told of his life. The most famous group of stories tell of the 12 labors of Hercules. His Etruscan equivalent was Hercule, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The son of Tinia and Uni. He was also identified with Herishaf in the Egyptian mythology. How many more should we go through?
That's not much more.
Mm-hmm.
In the Greek legend, Orpheus was the chief representative of arts and song and the lyre, and of great importance in religious history of Greece. He was a Greek. He was a Greek of Thracian origin. Is that right? Thracian.
Sure.
The Orphic mysteries, in other words. Rituals of unknown content were named after him. It is possible, but not probable, that Orpheus was an historical personage. Even in ancient times, his existence was denied. The name Orpheus does not occur in Homer or the Hesiod, but he is known at the time of Ibycus and Pindar, and they speak of him as the fathers of songs. He's interesting.
I should take this out of my mouth.
Francois?
Hang on, I'm trying to see where I am.
Oh, you're at Francois.
Because you're pointing to the shit and I wasn't
looking.
I'm
sorry, Francois.
I was looking at the screen. Sorry. So, Francois, was that Rabelais?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, someone's angry. So it's between the years of 1493 and 1553. Was a Renaissance writer born in
Chile. France.
Basically born in France. Okay. His second book, Pantagruel, includes one of the first references to Thelema and Do What Thou Wilt.
And this is where where Thou Wilt came from.
I know when everyone says Crowley coined it, it's like it's the
French poet.
Yeah. Well, it says a Renaissance writer, but I've always called him a
poet. Yeah.
So he probably was a poet too.
But this is the first time you start seeing a lot of Thelemic idealism come through, and what's interesting is the Gnostics incorporate it.
Yeah. I think.
And then the Thelemites grew out of it.
Yeah, but Crowley credited it as his own.
No, he didn't.
No, like the sayings.
No, he did. In his early years, he didn't.
Well, in his later years.
In his later, and here's the thing: we don't know if he did in his later years. We know that people accredited it to him, and he didn't correct them. But in his early years, he accredited it to the French writer.
I like his earlier works.
I think what happened what happens is with every older occultist that becomes that loses their way, and we were told it. If you can take credit for the sun rising, go ahead and take credit for it. Just don't say yes I did. don't say, no, I didn't. And I think that's what happened, is they started accrediting him for it, and he didn't say, no, I didn't. He never said, yes, I did either. He just let people believe what they wanted to believe about him. But his earlier works, he did. I actually was reading some of his earlier works back when I was first studying, and he actually did. I just could never remember the French poet or the French writer that it was. I knew it was Francois something.
Yeah.
But I could never remember. But it's. I don't know if it was necessarily Crowley's fault.
Maybe, perhaps it wasn't. I mean,
because he just simply didn't deny it. And a lot of occultists didn't deny
anything. They'll give him credit for something that would be like, oh.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it was easier than arguing.
And is he also the one that coined every man and woman is a star? I'm sure it's this
yes.
It's Francois.
Francois quoted, every man and woman is a star in their own right.
Right.
Right. And again, Crowley accredited it in his early years and his early works, but as he got older, and people just, I think it was almost forced upon him that this is what you did.
Oh my God.
You have to be the one that did this, or I can't believe it.
Do you know this is the first time I've ever heard you defend Crowley?
I know. I never defend Crowley, but I think because things get forced upon people.
Right.
How many times have I said something and I've quoted it and I've given credit for it, and people say, "No, Jymie came up with it," and it's
I've never heard you take credit for something you didn't.
And I always say, "No, I haven't," and they go, "Yes, you have to have," and I go, "No, I have not. I have never come up with anything new. There is nothing new I have ever came up with except for M or equals K. Just that one formula and the Veil theorems that we went through.
Yeah,
everything else is just my knowledge of what I know put together through years of practice and understanding. There's nothing new." And they go, "No, what you're saying,
innovative.
There's nothing innovative, especially when I'm teaching ancient religions."
Veil theorems.
Yeah, just my quantum theorem and my Veil theorem is the only innovative two things that I can actually take credit for.
Did you say innovative?
Innovative things that I can actually take credit are mine. Everything else is a rehash of my understanding of of foundational occult writers or mystics. And people will say no, and I've never taken credit for anything.
Because a lot of people, the sources people have not come across. Well, most people, obviously.
But when they look at you, they want it to come from you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it has to in their mind. It has to have come from you, and I think and I push it. I won't, if it's not mine, I don't own it, because I won't do that.
Right.
And you've never heard me own something that's not mine.
I know.
However, back in the days, people pushed it, and I think they needed it. It had to be done. It had to be done. And so he. I think it was forced upon him to accept that it was his, because people needed it to be his. And I don't discredit him for that.
Right, yeah.
Because I think that it was the position he was placed in as a almost godlike, that people needed it from him. Right. So I don't discredit him for that, because he did try in the earlier years. And I continue to say, I have never came up with anything except for two things, and those two things are mine.
George used to say, take credit for it. I got a feeling he got that from Crowley.
Right.
Because he always used to quote him.
And he'd say, "Take credit if they will give you credit for the sun rising."
There's no way he came up on his own.
Take it, Jymie. Take it, because they need you to take it. And I couldn't do it. I've never said any work was mine except for the two things that I actually did come up with.
Okay.
But and it's weird for me to defend a lot of, but Waite had that pushed on him too, where he quoted Levi, and it was pushed onto Waite, and he didn't say yes, and he didn't say no at the end. He fought it in his youth. He just simply,
it just wasn't important.
It wasn't important. It's, well, you know what? If you need it to come from me, then fine. But if you don't need it to come from me, then fine. But I can't argue it with you anymore. As long as you get what's being said, what difference does it make who you think it comes from?
Right.
In my land, it does. In my mind, it does, because I don't want to take credit for something I've never done.
Right.
And you don't want to take credit for something you've never done. But I think back then it was the idea of, what difference does it make where it comes from, as long as you get it?
Right.
Anyway, done.
Okay. So, at first, he was a novice of the Franciscan order, and later as a monk in the Fontenay-le-Comte, where he studied Greek and Latin, as well as science, philology, and law, already becoming known and respected by the humanists of his era, including Baudet. He harassed due to the directions of his studies. Rabelais petitioned Pope Clement the Seventh and was granted the permission to leave the Franciscan order and enter the Benedictine order of Malazet, where he was more warmly received. Later he left the monastery to study medicine and probably studied at the University of Poitiers and University of Montpellier. In 1532 he moved to Lyon, one of the intellectual centers of France, and not only practiced medicine but edited Latin works for the printer Sebastian Griffius. As a doctor, he used his spare time to write and publish humorous pamphlets which were critical of established authority and stressed his own perception of the individual liberty. His revolutionary works, although satirical, revealed an astute observer of social and political events unfolding during the first half of the 16th century.
You know how many occultists bury their heads and say, I don't want to know anything political, and I keep telling them?
I know.
It's important that you do.
Yeah.
And they go, I don't care. I don't watch the news, and I don't listen to the parties. You have to. It's part of Sophia.
Right.
It is. Algernon Charles Swinburne. 1837-1909 was a Victorian-era English poet and literary critic. His poetry was highly controversial in its day. Although he's now considered to be one of the great poets of Britain, he touched on many things, including liberty, the relationship between pleasure and pain, which was something new, the psychology of sexual passion. He also had an interest in Desaad, masochism, and femme fatales, along with the great disdain of Christianity. He wrote poems in favor of the independence of Italy, fueled by a hatred of tyranny. Swinburne served as an inspiration for many future poets, not the least of which, again, Mr. Aleister Crowley.
Mm-hmm. God, I gotta get off this email. It's driving me nuts. Right.
Are you still fighting with him?
No, I'm actually ignoring him.
Okay. Because you can't fight with an amoeba. It's hard to fight with an amoeba.
All right. Apollonius Tyanius, also called Apollonius of Tyana, or Apollon, was a philosopher and mathematician of Greek origin. His teaching influenced scientific thought for centuries after his death. He is a Gnostic saint of the EGC. He was born in the city of Tyana in the Roman Empire province of Cappadocia in Asia Minor. Educated in the nearby city of Tarsus, his life took on nearly legendary proportions when it is said he visited Rome and raised the daughter of a senator from the dead. This myth is likely as a reflection of his growing fame as a healer and spiritual leader. Apollonius was also an initiate of the Eleusinian Mysteries. He wrote many books and treatises on a wide variety of subjects during his life, including science, medicine, and philosophy. His scientific theories were ultimately applied to the earth-centered Ptolemaic idea that the sun revolved around the earth. A few decades after his death, the emperor Hadrian collected his works and ensured their publication throughout his realm.
Simon Magus, also known as Simon the Magician, Simon the Sorcerer, and Simon of Gitta, was a Samaritan proto-Gnostic. The ancient Gnostic sect of Simonianism believed that he was God in human form. Almost all of the surviving sources for life and thought of Simon Magus are contained in Christian works, in the Acts of the Apostles, in patristic works, and in the Acts of Peter. The different sources of information of Simon contain quite different pictures of him, so much so that it's been questioned whether they all refer to the same person. Assuming all references are the same person, whether they are, the earliest references to him, Acts of the Apostles, chapter 8. This tells of Simon Magus practicing magic in the city of Samaria, being converted to Christianity by Philip and working as a missionary, but then trying to buy from the apostles the power of conveying the Holy Spirit. This led to the word simony. Simony. Many scholars have questioned whether this Simon is the Simon intended to be referred to in legends concocted later, or a different one. Some believe the story of Simon Magus here is actually a coded Ebionite attack on Paul of Tarsus, which with Simon used to represent Paul. I like them. It doesn't matter. The myth of Simon the Magus is the myth of Simon the Magus. It doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Last one to go through. Let's just go through that one there because that's important.
Okay, so Pythagoras was an Ionian mathematician and philosopher, best known for formulating the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras, also known as the father of numbers, made influential contributions to Greek philosophy and religious teachings in the late 6th century BC. Because legend crowned his work even more than with other pre-Socratics, one can say little with confidence about his life and teachings. Pythagoras and his students believed that everything was related to mathematics and felt that everything could be predicted and measured in rhythmic cycles.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because I believe in that too.
Yeah. Oh, we did skip some.
Yeah, there's so many, but it's...
Yeah, it's getting kind of dry going through them all.
Yeah, but it's the interesting ones.
Yeah.
That were the most that I wanted to, us to share. So what we're going to do now is we're going to end the show with a song, and then open Q&A if anybody has any. So I'm going to end the song.
We're doing an early show.
What do you mean?
Oh, it's 9.
Yeah.
Blah.
Well, no. In fact, we're a little bit over, but let's do that. Then we'll do Q&A, okay? So we'll do exactly what we always do. We play a song, we stop the encoder, we start the encoder, introduce the Occultist Radio Q&A portion, and see if anybody has anything to ask. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I'm going to go to all our sites and say that we're starting the open Q&A in case people... And we have one in the email, too, that we're going to put out as soon as we come back, because I think it's interesting, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to find it again.
I'm going to play Lua Negra, because we haven't played it for a while.
Yeah, that's so weird. I was thinking about it today, too.
So,
yeah,
here we go. Yeah, it's a good one. Let's end the show with Lua Negra.
Oh.